All right, hey, good morning. It's Thursday morning. It's May 14th, and this is the latest episode of Up Close with the Composers, which seems like a weird title since both last week and this week now I'm gonna give you information about a composer who's actually dead. Yep, they're decomposing. Last week we talked about Vivaldi. This week I'm gonna read a story about Clara Schumann, right there, Clara Schumann. And this is from the book Lives of the Musicians. And it says good times, bad times, and what the neighbors thought. So here we go. We're going to read about Clara Schumann. And this is A Different White Dress Every Night is the subtitle of this one. She was born in Leipzig, Germany in 1819, and she died in Frankfurt, Germany in 1896. That's what she looks like. So here goes. I'm going to try to pronounce this German name the best I can. When Clara Wieck was a little girl, oh wait, I'm going to back up. She was a German composer considered to be one of the greatest pianists of all time, a direct influence on the music of Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms. So here goes. When Clara Wieck was a little girl, a student of her father's used to tease her with scary stories. He would wait till the room got dark and then dress up as a ghost, making shapes in the dim light. The man was Robert Schumann, and when Clara grew up, she married him. Robert became a brilliant composer, but seeing Clara play at age 9 was what gave him the idea of starting a career in music and studying with her father, one of the leading piano teachers in Germany. Clara's childhood was most unusual. She could hardly talk and was at first thought to be a deaf mute. Her father, her parents were divorced, started giving her piano lessons, partly to reassure herself that she could hear. She began speaking normally at age 8, when she was already on her way to becoming a world famous pianist. Her concerts were so popular that police had to be called in to control crowds. Fancy desserts were named after her. Poets wrote poems about her. She was nervous. I gotta sneeze. Here I go. Hi, Marcy. I'm gonna sneeze. I'm okay. Anyway, her concerts were so popular that police had to be called in to control crowds. Fancy desserts were named after her. Poets wrote poems about her. She was nervous before a concert, rarely satisfied with her performance, and often depressed afterward. But she found touring exhilarating and made dozens of tours outside Germany. In every town, she wore a different white dress each night. Chopin called her the only woman in Germany who can play my music. And Robert wrote all his music with her in mind. Your eyes, you romantic girl, he once wrote, follow me everywhere, and I often think one cannot make such music without a bride. He used some of her melodies, and she premiered his music, which was considered weird all over Europe. She was the famous one during her marriage. She was known as the Queen of the Piano, while he was known as Clara Wieck's husband. She was a much better pianist than he, and could earn more money in 3 weeks than he could earn in a year. Clara Schumann composed some 23 piano works, and most of her concerts included at least one work of her own. But at age 23, she wrote, I once thought that I possessed a creative talent, but I have given up on that idea. A woman must not desire to be a composer. Not one has done it, and why should I expect to? After she married, she kept performing but stopped composing, unable to practice whenever Robert was working. She practiced at night when he went out for a beer. There is not even one little hour in the whole day for myself, she said. Besides teaching piano and organizing all the details of her concert tours, she supervised a household of 3 servants, spent several hours each day writing letters, nursed Robert through several breakdowns, and took care of her children. She had 8 children within 16 years. She attributed her energy to the long walks she took each day. Clara knew everybody. Composers like Franz Liszt, Richard Wagner, and Felix Mendelssohn came to dinner. Her best friend was Johannes Brahms, 14 years her junior. She inspired much of his music. By rights, he wrote, I should have to inscribe all my best melodies, really, by Clara Schumann. She was left a widow at age 37 when Robert died in an insane asylum. To support her family, she turned to performing full time. She had a longer career than any man of the time, 60 years, and a large repertoire. Only arthritis stopped her performing. As she died at age 77, she asked her grandson to play Robert's music for her. It was the last music she ever heard. Now, I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm gonna go over to the piano and I'm gonna play a piece that I think was written by Clara Schumann. It just says Schumann on the piece. Could have been Robert, who knows? But here goes. It's called Shadows on the Moon. So that was Shadows on the Moon, I think, by Clara Schumann. Relatively sure that it was by Clara Schumann. And so now I'm going to wrap up this episode of Up Close with the Composers with a couple of final musical notes about Clara Schumann from this book, Lives of the Musicians. 3 of Clara's daughters and several granddaughters became piano teachers, and many of her students became prominent teachers as well. One, Carl Friedberg, came to the United States and taught at what is now the Juilliard School of Music. And if you haven't heard of the Juilliard School of Music, it is a particularly famous school of music in New York City, Juilliard. Next note, during their first year of marriage, Robert, her husband, composed more than 130 songs, his chief claim to fame. After their first child, he wrote 3 symphonies in rapid succession. And whenever Clara left on tour, he was unable to compose. So clearly he was inspired by her. Robert, her husband, wrote some of the best music there is for children learning to play piano, such as Kindererzählen, or Scenes from Childhood, and Album for the Very Young, because of his relationship with Clara when she was a child. So our composer, our musician of the week was Clara Schumann. I'll show you the big picture of her. Piano player, composer, 60-year career as a musician, toured everywhere. And as it says here, a different white dress every night. So, all right. Thanks for our small audience for tuning in to this morning's episode of Up Close with the Composers. Have a great day. See you later.